After her son's death, Jean Paxton's grief impelled her to action. She began composing letters to a local paper, the Martins Ferry Times Leader, designed to draw out the killer.
There was just every time I would sit down to write a letter, I would say a prayer. And I would say, please God, just give me the words to get to the person that killed my son.
The letters were at once stern and passionate. To the murderer of my son Jamie, she wrote, would it be easier for you if I wrote words of hate? I can't because I don't feel hate. I feel deep sorrow at losing my son. You took a light from my life last November and left me with many days of darkness. Have you thought of your own death? It'll happen. Unless you confess your sin and ask for God's forgiveness, you will face the fire and fury of hell at your own death. If the killer were reading Jean Paxton's letters, he seemed unaffected by them. Jean Paxton never gave up. She kept writing throughout 1991, determined to draw out Jamie's killer.
And I always felt if I could get my letters into the hands of the person that killed my son, I felt that I could get a response from them.
She turned out to be right. I am the murderer of Jamie Paxton, the typewritten letter read. Jamie Paxton was a complete stranger to me. I never saw him before in my life, and he never said a word to me that Saturday. Paxton was killed because of an irresistible compulsion that has taken over my life. I knew when I left my house that day that someone would die by my hand. I just didn't know who or where. I'm an average-looking person with a family, a job, and home, just like yourself. Something in my head causes me to turn into a merciless killer with no conscience. The letter arrived at the Martins Ferry Times Leader a few days before the one-year anniversary of Jamie's death. The letter described the Paxton murder in chilling detail. I was very drunk, and a voice in my head said, "Do it." I stopped my car behind Jamie's and got out. Jamie started walking very slowly down the hill toward the road. I raised my rifle to my shoulder and lined him up in the sights. I took at least 5 seconds to take careful aim. My first shot was off a little bit and hit him in the right chest. He groaned and went down. I wanted to make sure he was finished, so I fired a second shot aimed halfway between his hip and shoulder while he was prone on the ground. I jerked the shot and hit him in the knee. He never moved again. 5 minutes after I shot Paxton, I was drinking a beer and had blacked out all thoughts of what I had just done out of my mind. I thought no more of shooting Paxton than shooting a bottle at the dump. I know you hate my guts, and rightfully so. I think about Jamie every hour of the day, as I'm sure you do. For Sheriff McCourt, the letter was a beginning, evidence that might lead to a murderer. But he needed more. The typewriter used to write the letter, a gun. Jean Paxton, Jamie's mother, was in court the day Dillon pleaded guilty.
I just want to talk to him about Jamie, the kind of person Jamie was. Jamie was everything Thomas Dillon could never be. Dillon is a coward. He hid behind a gun, and Jamie was not that way.
Little did I know that on the evening news he was watching that, and it made him very angry that I had called him a pathetic coward.
We talked to him about remorse and how did you feel after these homicides? And the only one that he said that it really bothered him about was Jamie Paxton. He said, "I didn't realize the kid was so young."
Jean Paxton had looked forward to confronting Dillon in court. But his guilty plea cost her that opportunity. She asked Sheriff McCourt to arrange a conversation.
Hi.
McCourt agreed.
Paxton.
That evening,
This
Jean
is
Paxton's
Thomas
phone
Dillon.
rang. She found herself speaking with the murderer of her son.
When I picked up the phone that evening, it was just like somebody calling up to sell me something. He said, "Mrs. Paxton, this is Tom Dillon." It was just almost more than I could comprehend. The tone of his voice, the way he came across. Still, the arrogance was there.
You really hurt my feelings this afternoon when...
Dillon told Jean
Howard.
Paxton that when she called him a coward, she had hurt his feelings.
Uh-huh.
I really don't think he expected to get what he got from me. I think that Thomas Dillon could have handled the crying, the screaming, the saying of calling names, the cursing. I think he could handle that. But I did not lower myself to that level. I talked to him as a mother, and I really feel that through this whole thing, that is what got to Thomas Dillon.
Well, I understand.
After 3 years, Jean Paxton felt vindicated.
I felt really good. I walked out on my front porch, and I just felt like for the first time in 3 years that I was free. I was free of Thomas Dillon. I felt that I had defeated him by words, and I did it all for Jamie.